Alright guys, I'm just going to make a quick video here to make sure that you understand what's going on, and I always do vocabulary with you, and that's not going to stop now just because of this. And number one thing is I hope you're doing okay. Alright, I don't want you to stress a whole lot over this stuff. I want it to be fun. And what I have here for you is your scientific revolution and enlightenment vocab. There's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 14 words here. So you've got the word there on, maybe you can follow my pointer here. You got the words over here on the left. Just put a short definition here. I'm going to try to do these with you. And you got the image. Just copy and paste an image and put it in there. So, for instance, geocentric theory. You should be able to, after you click on enable editing, y'all are pros at this. You just say of the universe. Whoa. And that will do for that. Okay, so you got geocentric theory, the theory that put the Earth at the center of the universe. You know, the Catholic Church was teaching this. We learned this before we went to break. Before all this mess happened. We were talking about the Renaissance, and remember Nicholas Copernicus was one of those people who was threatened by the Catholic Church when he said, "Hey, the Earth is not at the center of the universe." And they, of course, they had been teaching this, and if that had been disproven, they would have lost a lot of power. Okay, so when you look these up, I'm going to run the definitions here with you real quick. Heliocentric theory, right here. We know what that is. That's the theory that put the sun at the center of the universe. And again, that is not completely correct. It's not correct at all, but at least it's a little bit better than saying that the Earth's at the center of it. They couldn't see past the solar system. They didn't know anything about galaxies yet, because one of those inventions down one of our next words there hadn't been really perfected. Nicholas Copernicus, he is the author of the heliocentric theory, and also he did a lot of work with these. I think I told someone it has paint all over it, and not digital clocks, but just he was obsessed with time and keeping time. People needed to learn. I mean, they needed to keep accurate time to survive. When to plant crops and things like that. Galileo Galilei, he is an astronomer, a scientist. He basically says that there's a law to motion, and that is governed by gravity. When we visited Pisa, we saw, for the Leaning Tower of Pisa, he was obsessed with how this force works. He didn't really call it gravity just yet, but he would take different size objects like these, and he would drop them at the same time, at the same height, and they would hit the ground at the same time. Obviously, this weighs a little bit more than my little bottle of water here, and he was very fascinated by how something that weighed more still hit the ground at the same time as something that weighed less. He would take 15-pound cannonballs and 5-pound cannonballs, drop that hit at the same time, and he was pretty obsessed with that. So he came up with this theory of motion and gravity, that all motion is affected by gravity. And these guys were starting to think about those things that they didn't think about in the Middle Ages. So Galileo Galilei, you need to his theory of gravity and motion. Okay, and when you look him up, you'll see this theory of motion. Don't get that mixed up with Isaac Newton and his 3 laws of motion. All right, so telescope magnifies vision. Well, you can just say magnifies vision far enough so you can see out into space, or just magnifies vision. That's what I want there. Microscope. This brings things that you can't see with the naked eye, on a micro level. You can see things more clearly with a microscope. And that's when they start to realize that there's things that, like bacteria and viruses out there, that were making people sick. That's when they really start to learn a lot about the plague, and the things that can invade the body that we really can't see. Sir Francis Bacon comes up with the scientific method. So Again, you just want to type that in right there. And then you'll come up with some kind of image. You'll look into Google. Just be careful with those things, what you're looking up. The scientific method basically has 4 parts. You come up with a guess or a hypothesis. You're like, I wonder what will happen if I put water on a stove and turn the eye on high. I guess that it will boil or make a big mess. That's the hypothesis. The next part of that is the test. Okay, so you test that. You go out and I'm not asking you to do that. I'm saying this is an example. And after the test is over with, you record your data, and then you weigh it again back to did my hypothesis come true? How many times did it come true? Sir Isaac Newton, we just talked about him in the 3 laws of motion. Something will stay in motion until something acts on it. And the natural thing of an object is to stay at rest. And he also comes up with some theories about velocity and things like that. Now, this isn't science class, but we are talking about the scientific revolution. Cartography, that's map making. And you guys can watch this video as many times as you want. You can slow it down, rewind it. I'm just giving you the short definitions. Rene Descartes, I think, therefore I am. He was a philosopher in the Enlightenment. Basically, that's a huge statement. I think, therefore I am. He's saying that that's what separates us. If we can think about things, you really exist. You can contemplate. And you don't have to write all this down. Rene Descartes was that guy that I told you. His dad was a clergyman. He said, son, he worked with the Catholic Church. He was a priest. And he said, I want you to be a Christian. And Rene Descartes kind of bucked up and said, I don't want to be a Christian because you tell me that. I want to be a Christian because I choose it. And so he was a bit of a thinker. Rene Descartes. Thermometer. We know what a thermometer is. It takes the ambient temperature. Come on, folks. All right, so we're talking about some of the instruments that were invented during the scientific revolution. And they noticed that mercury would rise and fall with ambient temperature. And they started to use that as a scientific an instrument. And some of those other ones like the barometer, your microscope, telescope, flasks and beakers, things like that took accurate measurements. And things happen pretty fast. I mean, we were talking about the Middle Ages before this, and they were just doing well to survive. All right, so your last 2 guys there we're going to do we're going to have some fun activities with this, hopefully some good discussion boards or make some videos, whatever you want to do. But Thomas Hobbes and John Locke, they're the first 2 guys that really come out with, in a secular way, remember secular means non-religious, and say, was man born good, evil, or basically like a blank slate? How do people get their personality different? They did a lot of debating, like accents, their culture, religion. And basically it boils down to this. Thomas Hobbes said that people are born evil. They're born naturally bad. They are some bad cookies, and they need something to scare them and into acting correct, moral. They need because if they don't, they're always going to act evil. They need something to be afraid of. And what he called that thing was a Leviathan. A Leviathan will, this big dragon, this big monster, aka the government or Big Brother, is going to keep you in the right lane and acting moral instead of immoral. Because you can't have a society that acts immoral. It won't exist that long. The last guy there, John Locke. John Locke was the one who said, I kind of disagree with you, Tommy. The people are born blank slates, and they become what their environment makes them. And so everybody's born this blank slate, and they will be molded and formed into whatever that culture is. That's what they're going to become. So put the image over here. I think a good image for Thomas Hobbes would be, if you look up Leviathan, you'll see this monster looking thing. And I want you to know that he basically is saying that that is the government. And how big and ugly that monster is, the more your people are going to be in order. The more, the smaller it is, and not very fearful. The people, if they're not afraid of it, the more disorder you're going to have in the society. So I'll let you think about that. If you have any questions, let me know. I just wanted to run this down with y'all because I know I always did vocabulary with you, and I hope you you get it. If not, just email me and let me know if you have any questions.